Would you walk into a room full of people who want you to fail, just to show them what true power looks like? The chandeliers of the Montclair estate sparkled above hundreds of glittering guests, but the only shine that truly mattered tonight was the one in Mariah Everly's eyes. Nobody at the annual Montclair Gala expected the cleaning lady to make an entrance, least of all the host, billionaire property mogul Gregory Montclair himself. Gregory's friends called him the King of Beverly Hills. His enemies, far less polite, called him the Puppet Master, for he loved nothing more than pulling the strings of the city's elite, all while enjoying the humiliation of anyone beneath his polished Italian loafers. And Mariah? For 2 years, she'd quietly cleaned up after Gregory and his friends, listening to their backhanded compliments, wiping away the lipstick stains from their whiskey tumblers, and learning more about their secrets than they could ever imagine. She wore a crisp uniform, kept her head down, and went home to her tiny apartment, counting tips and planning for a better life. She had no idea that Gregory had a special joke in mind for her this year. 3 days before the gala, as Mariah polished the grand piano in the ballroom, Gregory approached her with a wicked glint in his eye. He handed her a golden envelope, real gold leaf, imported from Paris, and said, "Why not join us on Saturday, Mariah? Charity gala, black tie, dress code, maximum elegance. I'm sure you have something suitable in your wardrobe, don't you?" His voice was syrupy with sarcasm, and the laughter of his friends echoed down the marble corridor. Mariah smiled politely, accepting the envelope with a bow, but inside, her heart burned. It wasn't just a joke. Gregory wanted her to show up and be their entertainment. He'd even invited local reporters, whispering that tonight's event will be unforgettable, the lesson Beverly Hills needs. Mariah heard him later, whispering to his icy wife, Cassandra, "I'll bet you 100,000 she either doesn't show or runs away the moment she sees the room." Can you imagine the look on their faces if she actually does come? Cassandra snickered. The poor thing. I hope she doesn't embarrass herself too much. But there were two things Gregory didn't know. First, Mariah Everly had once walked these halls as an equal before tragedy forced her into survival mode. Second, storms don't always destroy. They sometimes teach you how to dance. As the night arrived, guests swanned through the foyer in couture, eager to see what spectacle Gregory had planned. Their laughter echoed off the marble columns, sharp and cold. Suddenly, the laughter died. The double doors swung open, and Mariah Everly entered. Not as a cleaning lady, but as a queen. She wore a floor-length, midnight blue gown that shimmered like moonlight. Her natural hair was swept into an elegant updo, her skin glowed, and a string of rare black pearls, far too expensive for any maid, rested gracefully at her throat. The crowd froze, jaws slack, as she glided past them, her head high and shoulders straight. "Who does she think she is?" muttered Alicia Worthington, a senator's wife, to her friend, socialite Evangeline Chu. "She probably borrowed that dress. $10 says she returns it tomorrow." Evangeline, always quick to cut, sneered. "I doubt she can even pay the cleaning bill. She'll be lucky if she makes it to the first dance." But Mariah's smile never faltered. Her gaze was steady, her stride smooth, a woman on a mission. Every step was a silent challenge to the people who had dismissed her. Gregory, champagne flute in hand, sauntered up to her with his entourage in tow. "Mariah, what a surprise. I never doubted you'd come. A chance like this, for someone like you? How could you resist?" The air tightened. A few guests chuckled, waiting for Mariah to wilt. But she looked Gregory dead in the eyes and answered, "A chance like this? You mean a chance to be judged, ridiculed, and photographed for someone else's amusement? I've faced harder crowds than this, Gregory. I'm exactly where I belong." For the first time, Gregory faltered. Mariah's voice was so calm, so absolute, it sent a ripple through the crowd. The laughter died on their lips. The mood had shifted. "I hope you enjoy the evening," Gregory said, trying to recover his composure. "It'll be educational, I'm sure." "Oh, it will," Mariah said, her voice velvety smooth. "But perhaps not in the way you expect." The first hour of the gala passed in a tense, glittering haze. Mariah was the talk of every circle. Socialites eyed her from behind their crystal flutes, whispering guesses about her dress. Rented, borrowed, Maybe charity. No one guessed the truth. The gown had belonged to her mother, a legend in the city's social scene 20 years before, a woman erased from history by the Montclair family's schemes. As Gregory prepared for his main event, introducing Mariah as his special guest for all to mock, Mariah surveyed the room. Every face that had dismissed her, every smirk, every cruel whisper. And as the laughter began to bubble up, she knew this night would be one they'd never forget. Gregory tapped his glass and called for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "let me present our very special guest tonight, Miss Mariah Everly, our dedicated cleaning lady. Let's give her a warm Montclair welcome." Laughter erupted, cruel and pointed. Phones flashed as guests took photos, ready to blast them across their social feeds. Mariah stood tall in the center of the ballroom, bathed in light, her dignity unbreakable. But instead of humiliation, there was something regal in her expression, a kind of calm that made the mockery shrivel and die. Alicia approached her, her voice dripping with sugar. "Mariah, dear, that dress is something. Must have taken ages to find something that fit the occasion." Mariah smiled. "This dress belonged to my mother. She wore it the last time she stood in this very room." Gregory's expression changed instantly, but he kept his smile fixed. "What a lovely story. I'm sure your mother would be proud to see you here tonight." Mariah's eyes flashed. "My mother was once the heart of this home, before it was taken from her. Some of you may remember her, Celeste Everly Montclair." A gasp rippled through the room. Cassandra's wineglass nearly slipped from her hand. Gregory's grip on his flute tightened. The murmurs began, building like a storm. "Celeste? Didn't she? She was Gregory's? But that would mean—" Mariah turned, letting the silence stretch, each face now exposed and uncertain. For years they'd acted as though she was invisible. Tonight they saw her, and they didn't know what to do. As the first hints of panic registered on Gregory's face, Mariah drew herself up and addressed the crowd. "I want to thank you all for your warm welcome, and I want you to remember this moment, because sometimes the person you mock is the one holding the key to your secrets." The room was silent. Gregory Montclair, the king of Beverly Hills, was about to discover that the joke was on him. If you knew every rumor in the room was about to turn into your weapon, would you keep quiet or let the storm hit? The ballroom was no longer filled with easy laughter. Eyes darted between Gregory and Mariah, while the whispering reached a fever pitch. But Mariah wasn't finished. She stepped into the center of the marble floor, commanding attention with every breath. Her poise had changed the energy in the room. Suddenly, it was the rich and powerful who looked uneasy, clutching their glasses, searching for safety in old alliances. Gregory attempted to reclaim control, raising his voice above the crowd. "Enough games, Mariah. If you have something to say, say it." He flashed his teeth, expecting her to shrink away under the spotlight. But Mariah faced him, her voice calm, clear, unwavering. "Very well," she began, scanning the faces of Beverly Hills elite. "You invited me here as a joke. You thought you could humiliate me. But the truth is, Gregory, I'm not here for your entertainment. I'm here to return home." A heavy silence descended. Even the string quartet in the corner faltered, their bows hanging in the air. Mariah reached into her clutch and drew out a velvet box. She opened it with deliberate grace. Inside rested an antique ring, crowned with a blue sapphire. It sparkled beneath the lights, the Montclair family crest unmistakable. A hush fell as she lifted it. "This ring belonged to my mother, given to her by Henry Montclair, Gregory's own father." Now the entire crowd gasped. The story of Celeste Everly, the brilliant pianist who had once enchanted the old patriarch, was whispered about in hushed tones for years. No one had connected the dots to the new cleaning lady. Until now. Gregory's face went white. His wife Cassandra put a trembling hand over her mouth. For a brief second, it looked as if Gregory might faint. "You're making this up," he stammered, voice faltering. "Anyone could buy an old ring." Mariah's gaze pierced him. "Then why is my mother's name, Celeste Everly Montclair, engraved inside?" She handed the box to Alicia Worthington, who squinted, then paled as she read the inscription aloud. The murmurs surged again. Some guests turned to leave, not wanting to be caught in the center of a scandal. But curiosity pinned them in place. Gregory's arrogance wavered, replaced by pure fear. "This doesn't prove anything," he snapped. Mariah shook her head. "No, Gregory, it's only the beginning." A tall, broad-shouldered man in a tailored suit stepped forward from the doorway. His appearance silenced the crowd. It was Thomas Gale, one of the city's most respected inheritance attorneys. "Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce myself. I am here tonight at Miss Everly's request to clarify the real legacy of the Montclair family." He turned to Gregory. Henry Montclair did not cut Celeste Everly or her child from his will. In fact, he amended it in his final days to include Mariah as his lawful heir. "I have a certified copy of the will with me now." Gregory lunged for the paper, but Thomas kept it out of reach. "You can't do this," Gregory roared. "You can't just walk in here." Another voice, older and steadier, broke in. "He's not alone, Gregory." The room spun as Dr. Evelyn Rhodes entered, the family's longtime physician. "I was forced to falsify the cause of Henry's death 20 years ago," she confessed, voice trembling. "I can no longer stay silent. He died from slow arsenic poisoning, not natural causes." Gasps and cries echoed. The truth was far more monstrous than any of them had imagined. Gregory staggered backward. His mask of superiority crumbled. "You're lying." But Evelyn shook her head. "You know it's true. You watched your own father die, then erased his other family to keep his empire for yourself. You sent Celeste away. You left Mariah with nothing." Mariah's voice cut through the chaos. "I spent years cleaning up after the mess you made, Gregory. Not just dust and wine stains, but your lies, your cruelty, your crimes. I applied for this job to gather the evidence you thought no one would ever find." She pressed a button on her phone. Instantly, the speakers crackled to life, and Gregory's own voice rang out over the ballroom. "You're going to keep your mouth shut about the blood tests, Evelyn. If you don't, you'll never work again. And as for Celeste's brat, she'll disappear, just like her mother." The silence afterward was absolute. Cassandra burst into tears. "Gregory, what did you do?" He spun, desperate, to the crowd. "You don't understand. She's making all this up." But now every eye was on Mariah. The cleaning lady they'd dismissed was unmasking a truth bigger than any of their petty secrets. Suddenly the doors opened again. Two uniformed officers entered. "Gregory Montclair, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." The guest gasped as the billionaire was cuffed and read his rights, right there on his own marble floor. Mariah watched without a hint of triumph, only a deep, weary relief. As Gregory was led away, she turned to the assembled crowd. "I didn't come here to ruin anyone's life," she said, voice shaking with emotion. "I came to reclaim what was stolen and to prove that the truth always rises, no matter how deep you bury it." For the first time that night, the room erupted, this time in applause. But as Mariah looked around, she knew this was only the beginning. Would you forgive the people who laughed at you, or use your power to change the game forever? The night the police led Gregory Montclair out in handcuffs, the world outside the mansion exploded. Reporters, cameras, the city's buzzing social media, all captured the collapse of a man who'd once believed himself untouchable. But inside the Montclair ballroom, the real transformation was just beginning. Mariah Everly, the woman once invisible to everyone in that room, stood calmly as the storm she'd unleashed swirled around her. The guests who'd whispered, who'd snickered and pointed, now looked at her with a wild mix of fear, respect, and awe. Some tried to apologize. Others avoided her gaze. But Mariah didn't seek retribution. She was already looking to the future. It was not just about justice for herself. She remembered her mother, Celeste Everly Montclair, her dignity, her strength, her endless hope that the truth would one day come out. Tonight, that hope was finally realized. A week after the gala, Mariah returned to the mansion. This time she wasn't wearing a uniform nor a borrowed gown. She arrived as the rightful heir, her name finally restored, her power undisputed. The company Gregory had ruled through intimidation and backroom deals faced a reckoning. Mariah summoned the board, presented the evidence, and quietly announced her intention to lead the Montclair Group. Not as a conqueror, but as a builder. Her first move was to launch a full audit of every project, every account, every shadowed corner of the company. No more secrets. There were skeptics on the board, old men who dismissed her as the cleaning lady, nervous that she'd turned the company upside down. But Mariah surprised them. She was firm but fair, demanding but never cruel. She raised salaries for staff, promoted workers who'd been overlooked, and created scholarships for the children of employees. Within 6 months, the Montclair Group, long stagnant under Gregory's rule, saw a 30% boost in profits. Clients returned, drawn by the fresh sense of purpose and fairness. Media coverage that had once mocked Mariah now hailed her as the lady who rebuilt an empire. Her story trended worldwide, proof that dignity, when paired with courage, could change the rules for everyone. One afternoon, Cassandra, Gregory's ex-wife, asked to see her. She arrived with her children, their eyes still wide with shock and pain. "Mariah, I never knew what Gregory was capable of," Cassandra whispered, voice trembling. "You could destroy us if you wanted to, but you chose not to." "Why?" Mariah smiled gently. "Children shouldn't pay for the sins of their fathers. They deserve the chance to become better." Cassandra broke down in grateful tears, and Mariah comforted her. The first moment of true healing either woman had known in years. The company's new culture spread through the city. Employees shared stories of how Mariah remembered their names, listened to their ideas, and quietly helped those who struggled. She created a fund to help staff facing medical crises or domestic abuse. She insisted the Montclair Group invest in affordable housing and community programs, turning profits into opportunities for people just like her. The people who had once sneered, like Alicia Worthington and Evangeline Chu, sent her flowers, invitations, even friendship requests. But Mariah kept her circle small, loyal to those who'd shown her kindness in her lowest days. Her greatest allies were still the maids, drivers, and kitchen staff she'd once worked beside. Months later, Mariah sat in Gregory's old office, now stripped of its gaudy trophies. In their place were photos of her mother and of young employees promoted to leadership. Her desk overflowed with letters from people inspired by her journey. One letter arrived from Gregory himself, now serving time for his crimes. "Mariah, I don't expect forgiveness, but you should know that your strength changed me. I spend every day thinking about how I became the man who killed his own father for greed. I hope you use the empire better than I ever did. I'm sorry for everything." Mariah folded the letter away. Forgiveness was personal. Justice had already been done. During a Forbes interview, a journalist asked her, "Some say your revenge was too severe. What do you say to that?" Mariah looked out the window, watching employees enjoy lunch in the courtyard. "Revenge would have been destroying Gregory's life for the sake of it. Justice means making sure the truth comes out and using power to build, not break. I don't want to be famous for what I survived. I want to be remembered for what I made possible for others." That night, Mariah walked through the city, her heart finally at peace. She no longer lived in a cramped apartment. She'd used her wealth to adopt 2 girls from foster care, giving them the home she'd always dreamed of. As she tucked them in, she told them stories, not about suffering, but about resilience and the joy of turning pain into purpose. The Montclair Empire had a new face, one that represented hope, dignity, and a second chance for all. As for those who laughed at her the night of the gala, they would remember forever. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone ignores, until she chooses to speak. And if you find yourself facing injustice, remember, the greatest revenge isn't in someone else's ruin. It's in building something so powerful and just. The old world can never ignore you again.